This is the Satin Stitch. The Satin Stitch is one of the classic fill stitches in embroidery. It looks like satin, thus its name. It can fill any kind of shape that you want. We're going to start with a square, but you could fill a circle, you could fill any sort of shape. I'll show you an example from the cover of a book we sell on our website called Embroidered Garden Flowers. It's a Japanese book. These leaves are done in satin stitch. So you can see from the edges they go in, or they can come from the center out, and then they go on the other side. So that by going in two different directions, it creates the center line of the leaf. But that is satin stitch. So we're going to start it in a square. The satin stitch isn't hard to do mechanically, but it is hard to do and do it well. So it's really good to just start in a square shape and practice it until you feel like you have some confidence. It's not, I would never turn you away from it, but I just want to warn you that you just want to work on it so that it'll look good. When I'm showing people how to do it, and even if I were doing a square block on anything, I would tend to outline the block in pencil lightly, and then I would put in some vertical guidelines. So I have those for you here today because they will help me, actually, because my satin stitches tend to veer off to the right. And maybe everybody's veer off somewhere, but these will help keep me in line. So you want to work just outside your pencil line if you've drawn a pencil line. I'm going to come up here and go down. I'm working with 4 strands of floss today. You can work with even more or less. I just used 4 so it would fill it up a little faster. You always work in the same direction, so top to bottom or bottom to top, and mainly top to bottom would be the most logical. So then we go back up. So it eats a lot of floss, just so you know, because your back is going to look as solid as your front, the way it's made. So just be prepared to have enough floss on hand. So I'm going to fill these areas with of the outline. You don't want to pull too tight, because when you release you want to pull tight enough, but don't cinch it too tight, because when you take it off the hoop, if you've cinched too tightly, you're going to have puckering. So just beware of that too. And you don't want to do a really large area because they can snag. And this area that I'm filling may be too big, but it's about as big as you want to go in terms of the height, in terms of the direction of the satin stitch, because they can snag, and that would be terrible. So if you're doing something large, then you'll choose another fill stitch, like the short long stitch, which is built off of the satin stitch. But anyway, we won't go there right now. We'll just get this one done. Okay, now I will choose to fill in the center of each of these areas, so I have another straight guide to sort of work off of. And then I'll go back and fill in let's see, I think I'll go over to this one. Fill in the spaces in between. So you really don't want any white space. So the more floss you load your needle up with, then in a way the less stitches you need to do. So that's a consideration. And the other thing you can do, I didn't choose to do it here, but sometimes I do it, is to outline the shape in a split stitch with not very many threads, like maybe just with 2 threads. Now I'm going to split this space in half. I'm already starting to run out of floss, so I'm just going to do a few more. You don't need to watch me do the whole thing. This will give you the idea of how you do it. And then I'll come back and fill in these smaller areas here. And try to keep your tops and bottoms pretty straight. I see that one I should have probably taken up a little. There's a little space right there, so I need to be cognizant of that. And you want this to be as even on the square as possible. It's just such a beautiful stitch, and you'll see it all the time in floral embroidery. You'll see it in lots of other embroidery too, but it just makes beautiful flower petals and leaves. So you'll see it a lot. So if you choose to get one of our flower books, then you'll get a lot of practice. So I'm going to stop here because I'm running out of floss. But that is the satin stitch, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful stitch.